Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. I think there's no way around it. Some disappointing news over the last 24 hours for the Oregon Duck fans. Now, it started with Trey McNutt breaking his leg. Then it moved to Jurrion Dickey, currently suspended, dismissed from this Oregon Ducks program. Many of y'all know how I like to address these situations. Number one, best wishes to both these young athletes. I mean, Jurrion Dickey is a unique talent at the wide receiver position, can say the exact same thing for Trey McNutt at the safety position. I look at this situation and say, and this is the conversation Dan Lanning is having in the walls right now. This is an opportunity for a lot of other really talented football players to step up and show they can be difference makers in 2025. And I guess the way I'll start this episode before we get into, hey, what it might look like without these two players is, I look at it and say, this is what separates good teams from great teams. Good teams, when they lose players of this caliber, it can derail the season. You look at Oregon, a team that I fully believe to be great going into 2025. They're really good football players. It's hard to replace those kind of football players. But at the same time, you're looking at this depth chart and say, there are a lot of answers. There are a lot of guys who now have the opportunity to step up and become difference makers. In the same breath, you're starting to hear some of the storylines as well. You're starting to see players step up at these positions going into 2025. Now, who are they? What is it going to look like? That's the conversation I want to get into before we do it. As always, the Oregon fans, appreciate you guys. And look, we've had a lot of highs when we talk about this Oregon Ducks program. Many of y'all been rocking through the highs and the lows. And I appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, call your shot in the comment section. Like, okay, at the wide receiver position, who do we think steps up? At the safety position, who do we think steps up going into 2025? Let it rip in the comment section. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, let's start with the wide receiver room, because this to me feels like a bigger question for Oregon in 2025 is, hey, how many wide receivers and who are the wide receivers that we trust to be the difference makers? Because Evan Stewart is obviously been banged up. Now Jurrion Dickey is currently not with the program. Who are going to be the guys? J-Mac, Jeremiah McClellan. This is the unique part about Oregon. You lose a five-star wide receiver in Jurrion Dickey. Jeremiah McClellan, top 100 kid going into year two, a guy that I think is immensely talented, in a wide receiver that, in my opinion, kind of fits what Oregon is looking for. Because you look at it and say Jeremiah McClellan is that bigger bodied boundary wide receiver that can make it happen at all three levels. And you look at Oregon and say that's the kind of wide receiver we're looking for. To me, what separates Jeremiah McClellan is it's not like you're reading off these crazy track and field times, but you go turn on the film from this kid at the high school ranks and say, really smooth mover for someone who's 6'1", 200 pounds, can thrive in contested catch situations, can work the middle of the field. Look, I think this is a kid that, if he puts it all together, top three in receiving yards on this football team in 2025. In fact, from what I'm hearing from Jeremiah McClellan, I would probably put my money on that. I think Corey Moore probably leads this team in receiving yards. I think Kenyon Sadiq is probably going to be number two. Jeremiah McClellan looking like that third option in this Oregon offense. Not to mention you have a guy like Gary Bryan, who I think is going to have a big year from the slot. A lot of potential names. Kyle Casper, we all know, look, if Kyle Casper strings together a healthy season in 2025, we know he is more than capable of providing what Oregon needs. Very similar conversation for a guy like Dylan Gresham. Malik Benson's a wild card. Malik Benson might be, outside of Corey Moore, the most gifted pass catcher in this room. Can he put it all together at the college football level? Haven't seen it yet, but we know he has the athletic profile to do so. I guess the whole point I'm trying to make is, unfortunate news with Jurrion Dickey, 100%. You're already hearing about players emerging and kind of stepping up. And this is a position that's really important to have some pass catchers emerge, because outside of Corey Moore and Kenyon Sadiq, and I would add Corey Moore is a true freshman, not really sure what we have. There's a lot of talent waiting for somebody to step up. Number two, Trey McNutt. And this is unfortunate because, I had Trey McNutt in the two deep. I think he was going to play a lot of football, and heck, he still might play a lot of football when he gets back healthy. What you're hearing is that Aaron Flowers is emerging. And I think we're looking for, hey, who's that safety next to Dylan Tiemann? It's becoming increasingly feasible that Aaron Flowers is the guy. In fact, that seems to be what you're hearing from the program. What excites me about Aaron Flowers being the safety that is stepping up? To me, it's that he complements Dylan Tiemann at such a high level. I mean, go back to Oregon safeties in 2024. You had two safeties with very similar body types and very similar skill sets. They weren't very big, they weren't very long, they weren't very fast, and both kind of thrived as box safeties. You didn't really have that rangy, deeper third safety. Well, I look at Oregon safety room this year and say, that's why he went out and spent the money for Dylan Tiemann. And he is a premier deeper third safety that can ball hawk for you and force some turnovers. A guy that's the glue guy in the safety room. Now look at Aaron Flowers and say, this dude thrives inside the tackle box. You can walk Aaron Flowers down closer to the line of scrimmage. He can support the run at a very high level, can operate in some man coverage. I think he does his best work going back to his high school film around the line of scrimmage. So you got two safeties that I think are very good football players that provide some different skill sets. Go back to 2024, you had two solid guys that kind of had the similar skill sets and didn't really provide a ton of versatility. I think that should excite a lot of Oregon fans. And that's not to say Peyton Woodyard ain't going to play. And that's not to say Kingston Lope ain't going to play either. I mean, that's kind of what we're getting at is you lose a five-star safety in Trey McNutt. Aaron Flowers was a top 100 kid. Kingston Lope was a blue chip guy. Peyton Woodyard was a blue chip guy. All going into year two with this Oregon defense. Chances are some of them are going to be ready. And it sounds like Aaron Flowers might be the most ready. Here's another emerging storyline, getting into some more positive vibe news, so to speak. How good will Bear Alexander be? This might be one of the bigger fall camp storylines for Oregon fans to monitor. I mean, if you get a maximized Bear Alexander, that's a first, second team all Big Ten caliber guy. At least in my opinion, that's what the film tells us from Bear Alexander at USC. Now, it was not nearly as consistent as it needed to be. We know he has game wrecking ability. The thing that continues to stand out to me about Bear Alexander is we're hearing nothing. That to me continues to be good. There ain't no problems in the locker room. There ain't no problems with missing practice or being sidelined with injuries. It sounds like Bear Alexander, from the minute he stepped foot on campus in January, has put his head down and gone to work. That bodes very well for the version of Bear Alexander that we're going to get in Eugene, Oregon in 2025. We all talk about it. I mean, you talk about what can get Oregon over the hump and win a national championship in 2025. To me, it starts on the defensive line. We feel very, very good about what these edge rushers are going to be. Like Mateo U, Tatum with Elijah Rushing emerging and Blake Purchase coming off redshirt should be very, very dynamic. How good are we going to be? How dominant are we going to be in the middle of that defensive line? Can we have a guy that steps up and gives us the production that Derek Harmon gave us? I think we know Amari Washington going to be damn good. He's only going into year 3. If we get that from Bear Alexander, and if we get some rotational bodies like Jericho Johnson, Matthew Johnson, and Aiden Breland to step up, this is a really, really deep defensive line that is contingent on some guys taking the step. We know it's going to be a good defensive line. Can it be elite? Can it be one of the best defensive lines in the country? The talent on paper says it could be. If it is in 2025, that's one of the biggest things that needs to happen for Oregon getting over the hump. Last storyline, Dante Moore trending to be quarterback 1. Dan Lanning hasn't necessarily come on and say it, but you listen to on three reporters like Pete Nakos, that is the vibe within the program is Dante Moore. It's his job to lose. There's two things that I take from that. Number one, I think Austin Novus adds a really good football player. So Dante Moore holding on to that quarterback 1 job tells me Dante Moore has taken the step, tells me he's taking care of the football more, tells me he's making better decisions. We all know the ceiling this kid provides. And going back to a storyline we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Dante Moore dramatically improved his body, improved his athleticism. Dan Lanning told me he was hitting 21.5 miles per hour on the GPS. You talk about a quarterback that can give you, look, he ain't going to be Lamar Jackson. We all know that. But if he can be a guy that can get himself out of trouble, similar to how we saw Bo Nix do it, similar to how we saw Dylan Gabriel do it, but give you a little bit more juice as a thrower of the football, this Oregon offense gets better. Like, there's a very real chance that Dante Moore takes over this Oregon offense and you see a better offense in 2025. Well, look, things have to fall in place. Pass catchers have to step up. The transfer tackles have to hit, but Dante Moore gives you a higher ceiling. We've been saying that all off season long. And the fact that he's emerging as the guy tells you that it might be coming all together. And if Dante Moore does put it all together, it gives Oregon a very good chance. It's been very, very quiet from Oregon in fall camp. These are some of the storylines that are starting to emerge, but I still, every time we talk to this football team, you understand the depth that they have. And then when you have to have conversations like Jurrion Dickey getting removed from the team and like Trey McNutt going out with an injury, you start to really appreciate how much talent and depth this Oregon team has to turn to in some of these situations. That's what separates. I mean, talk about playing your best football in December and January. You have to be deep. You're not going to stay healthy all 12 games in the regular season. You're going to be going into the playoffs banged up. Do you have the depth to continue to play good when it matters most? That's really the conversation for Oregon. Do I think Oregon takes the field immediately with all the young talent and all the moving pieces? Do I think Oregon looks like the best team in the country week 1, week 2, week 3? No, probably not. You're looking for this Oregon team to play their best football late in the season when it matters most, because that's what we didn't have last year. Oregon looked like the best team in the country for a large time in the 2024 year. Just didn't look like the best team when it mattered most. Can this team continue to get better with all the young talent throughout the year, so when it comes time in January, we plan our best football? We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.